Our family has the property. It comes up at every gathering, usually after the initial hellos and before dessert, discussed in hushed, frustrated tones. It's a collection of old buildings downtown in Havenwood, the small town where our family roots run deep, but the economy has withered over the past few decades. There's the old hardware store my grandfather ran, boarded up now, dust collecting in the display windows. Next to it, a small, defunct manufacturing workshop he also owned, its loading dock decaying. And a couple of empty storefronts beside that. To the rest of my family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, even my own parents, the property isn't an asset. It's a burden. Another tax bill came in. Uncle Frank sighed at Thanksgiving dinner, shaking his head. Still costing us money just sitting there. Nobody's going to buy it, Aunt Carol added, her voice laced with finality. Not in this town. It's just a drain. The consensus was always the same. Sell it. Cut our losses. Get rid of the headache. It represented a past that was gone, a future they couldn't envision. They saw crumbling facades, deferred maintenance, and a perpetually empty for sale sign that no one ever called about. They saw ashes, but I saw something different. I saw the solid brick bones of the buildings under the peeling paint. I saw the potential for creative reuse of the old workshop space. I saw the possibility of a revitalized downtown, maybe driven by remote workers moving out of expensive cities or niche businesses catering to a different market. I saw the history, yes, but also a future that everyone else was blind to. I saw gold in those ashes. When I tried to voice my vision, the reaction was predictable, and it stung every time. What if we renovated the storefronts? I suggested at that same Thanksgiving, my voice perhaps a little too eager. We could turn the workshop into something like a shared workspace or an indoor market for local crafts. A chorus of polite and not so polite dismissals followed. My cousin Mark, who works in finance in the city, chuckled. Alex, be realistic. You don't know anything about real estate development. That takes serious capital, and Havenwood's a ghost town. An indoor market? Aunt Carol raised an eyebrow. Who would come? The town doesn't have the traffic anymore. My own father, while not unkind, was weary. It sounds nice, son, but it's a pipe dream. We just need to sell it and be done with it. They doubted my ability. They saw my enthusiasm as naivete, my vision, as unrealistic idealism. They saw my lack of hard-nosed business experience in the real estate or development world. They believed I didn't understand the practicalities, the financial realities, the impossibility of reviving a dead asset in a dying town. They loved me, perhaps, but they did not believe in my judgment or my capability to see value where they saw none. The frustration was immense, a knot in my stomach. It hurt to have my ideas, my vision, so readily dismissed by my own family. But their lack of faith didn't extinguish my conviction, it fueled it. I knew the potential was there. I knew they were wrong. Their doubt in my ability became a quiet, fierce motivator. Everyone else saw a burden to be shed, a reminder of decline. Only I saw the possibility of transformation. Only I saw the gold, and I was determined to prove them wrong. Leaving that family gathering, the sting of their dismissal lingered, but it was overshadowed by a growing certainty. I couldn't stand by and let them sell the property for pennies on the dollar, or worse, let it continue to decay, a symbol of our family's retreat from Havenwood. They saw a burden, a lost cause. I saw a chance. A chance to prove my vision wasn't naive, and a chance to honor the potential I knew was there, even if it was buried under layers of neglect and skepticism. The idea solidified. I would take it on myself. They wanted to be rid of it. I wanted to save it. It was a perfect, if ironic, alignment of desires. I approached my parents first, then Uncle Frank, who seemed to be the unofficial family representative for the property's woes. I laid out my proposal simply. I know everyone wants to sell, I said, but nobody's buying. I'm willing to take it on. I'll handle the property taxes from now on, take care of the basic upkeep. Consider it me taking a liability off the family's hands. There was surprise in their eyes, then a visible wave of relief. You'd do that, Alex? Uncle Frank asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. Just take it? Yes, I confirmed. I see potential, and I don't want to see it fall into disrepair. I avoided using words like gold mine or revitalization. That would just bring back the skepticism. I framed it as me handling a problem they wanted gone. They agreed, readily. They weren't getting offers anyway, and the thought of offloading the ongoing costs and headaches was clearly appealing. There might have been a few cautionary words about how much work it would be, and maybe a lingering doubt in their eyes about my ability to actually do anything with it, but mostly, they were just glad someone else was taking responsibility. Paperwork was drafted, transferring ownership or at least full management and financial responsibility to me for a nominal amount. Essentially, they paid me to take it, in the form of letting me have it for next to nothing. Taking control felt significant. The day the final documents were signed, I drove out to Havenwood, parking on the quiet downtown street in front of the old hardware store. Walking around the perimeter, running my hand along the cool, solid brick, peering through the dusty windows. At the ghostly shelves and the layer of grime that covered everything, the challenges were undeniable. The roof needed work, the plumbing was questionable, the wiring was probably ancient, and the sheer amount of cleaning and repair felt overwhelming. It looked just as bad as my family had described, maybe worse up close, but I still saw it. The sturdy structure, the spacious interiors, the history embedded in the details. I saw the potential for transformation, even if the path to get there was daunting. The weight of the responsibility settled on my shoulders, heavy but also invigorating. It was mine now. The burden they had cast off was my canvas. The secret work began immediately, long before any visible renovation. This was the research and planning phase, done entirely outside of family discussions. They thought they were done with the property. They were unaware that I was just getting started. I dove into studying small-town revitalization trends, researching grants and funding available for historical properties, analyzing local demographics for niche business opportunities, and researching innovative technologies that could be integrated into old spaces. I leveraged my own analytical skills and started acquiring new knowledge about property development, zoning laws, and construction costs, a different kind of expertise than my regular job, but one that was essential for turning my vision into reality. My family remained oblivious to the depth of my efforts. They saw the property as a problem solved, off their books. They likely assumed it would continue to sit there, perhaps deteriorating more slowly under my minimal upkeep. They didn't see the hours I spent researching, the plans I was meticulously drafting, the network of specialized contractors and consultants I was quietly starting to build. They didn't see the gold I was uncovering, piece by piece, not in the physical buildings yet, but in the potential I was unlocking through knowledge and planning. The burden was now mine, but so was the dream, and I was building its foundation in silence. Taking ownership of the Havenwood property wasn't just a symbolic act. It was the acquisition of my canvas. While my family breathed a collective sigh of relief, glad to be rid of the burden, I was already immersed in the meticulous, often frustrating process of planning its resurrection. This wasn't visible work. It was the deep dive into turning my abstract vision into concrete reality, happening mostly after hours, away from the physical site itself initially. My vision for the property wasn't just a vague dream anymore. It was a detailed blueprint. The old hardware store would be restored to its historical facade, but modernized inside, housing a couple of small, unique retail spaces for local artisans or pop-up shops. The decaying workshop behind it, with its high ceilings and large windows, would be transformed into a vibrant co-working space, equipped with high-speed internet and modern amenities, targeting remote workers and entrepreneurs in the region. The upper floor of the hardware store could become unique loft apartments or short-term rentals, drawing in visitors interested in the town's history and creative revival. It would be a mixed-use hub, breathing new life into that corner of downtown Havenwood. But the path from vision to reality was fraught with challenges. Securing funding was a major hurdle. Banks in the city were skeptical of investing in a struggling, small-town property. I spent hours researching grants, historical preservation grants, rural development grants, small business revitalization funds, writing detailed proposals that required complex financial projections and a compelling narrative for Havenwood's future. Navigating the local bureaucracy in a small town like Havenwood presented its own set of challenges. Zoning laws, building codes from decades ago, permit applications that moved at a snail's pace. It required patience, persistence, and learning how to work within the system. Finding the right contractors and experts was equally difficult. Many preferred larger projects in more prosperous areas. Those willing to work in Havenwood needed to understand the nuances of restoring old buildings and share some belief in the town's potential without charging exorbitant fees. I networked tirelessly, researching local builders, architects who specialized in historical renovations, and consultants familiar with small-town development projects. Despite the obstacles, I started taking the first tangible, albeit often invisible, steps. I secured a small competitive grant for structural assessments and architectural drawings, a crucial early victory that validated the project's potential in the eyes of outsiders, even if my family remained unaware. I found a skilled, semi-retired, local contractor, old school but reliable, who agreed to help with essential stabilization work on the workshop roof at a reasonable cost. I spent weekends meticulously cleaning out decades of dust and debris from the buildings, revealing the solid bones beneath the decay, grunt work that wasn't glamorous but was necessary groundwork. I navigated the permit process, securing approval for initial cleanup and exterior stabilization work, tasks that seemed minor but were vital prerequisites for any major renovation. Throughout this period, my family occasionally asked about the property. "Still got that old place, Alex?" Uncle Frank would ask, usually with a tone that implied he expected me to complain about taxes or repair costs. My replies were intentionally brief and reassuring. Making progress, getting the initial plans together, handling the basics. They'd nod, their skepticism unwavering, clearly believing I was either throwing good money after bad or just delaying the inevitable. They saw my ongoing involvement not as progress, but as my continued, naive attachment to a burden they were smart enough to shed. They remained completely unaware of the detailed plans, the secured grant, the specific contractors lined up, the depth of the foundation I was laying in secret. My conviction and my vision deepened with every challenge overcome, every small victory secured. The detailed plans on paper, the financial projections showing potential profitability, the belief of the few external professionals who saw the project's potential, it all validated what I had seen from the beginning. The memory of my family's doubt, their dismissal of my ability, no longer stung with frustration, but fueled a quiet, fierce determination. They saw ashes. I was proving that the gold was not only there, but was slowly, painstakingly, being unearthed. With the initial planning complete, grants secured, permits obtained, and contractors lined up, the transformation of the Havenwood property moved from the quiet world of blueprints and proposals into the loud, dusty reality of construction. Scaffolding went up around the old hardware store. Dumpsters appeared on the street. The sounds of hammers, saws, and shouted instructions replaced the silence that had hung over the buildings for years. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was tangible, visible action. Renovating old buildings in a small town presented its own unique set of challenges. Peeling back the layers of past renovations and decay revealed unforeseen problems. Outdated wiring wrapped in crumbling insulation, plumbing that had long since corroded, structural issues hidden behind false walls. Every discovery required a quick assessment, a consultation with the contractors, and often an adjustment to the budget and timeline. It was a constant process of problem-solving, demanding flexibility and persistence. I spent weekends driving out to Havenwood, working alongside the contractors, overseeing progress, making on-the-spot decisions. My mind constantly engaged in balancing the historical integrity I wanted to preserve with the modern functionality the space needed. The locals in Havenwood were, at first, curious. They'd stop and watch, some skeptical, others with a flicker of hope in their eyes. I made an effort to talk to them, explaining the vision for the mixed-use space, the co-working area, the unique retail shops. Their cautious optimism, their desire to see downtown revived, was a different kind of motivation than proving my family wrong. It was a sense of contributing to a community that needed it. Inevitably, the news of the construction reached my family. A cousin, visiting a friend in the area, drove by and saw the activity, calling my mother surprised. An uncle heard about it from a local acquaintance at a regional event. Photos of the scaffolding and dumpsters might have even appeared on a local Havenwood community Facebook page. "So," Uncle Frank said during a phone call, a note of surprise in his voice, "heard you've actually started doing something with that place in Havenwood? Saw pictures of scaffolding." "Yeah, the renovation is underway," I replied, keeping my tone casual. The family's reaction wasn't immediate belief in my grand vision. It was more a surprised acknowledgement that I was actually going through with it. Their skepticism shifted. It wasn't about whether I could sell it anymore. It was about the sheer cost and likelihood of succeeding with such a large undertaking. "Hope you know what you're getting into, Alex," my father said cautiously. "Renovations on old buildings always cost more than you think." "It's going to be a money pit," I overheard a cousin remarking at a family picnic. They still saw it as a risky, potentially foolish endeavor, a large-scale version of throwing good money after bad. They didn't see the detailed planning, the market research, the specific vision. They just saw the visible, expensive process of trying to fix a broken thing in a struggling town. Despite the challenges and their lingering doubts, seeing the physical transformation begin was incredibly rewarding. The old decaying facades were slowly being stripped back, revealing the sturdy brickwork underneath. New window frames matching the historical style were installed, replacing the grim, boarded-up look. The workshop space was being cleared out, its high ceilings and open layout hinting at the modern co-working area it would become. The project reached a significant milestone when the exterior restoration of the hardware store building was completed. The scaffolding came down, revealing a beautiful, historically accurate facade that looked completely different from the neglected building of just months before. It was undeniable proof that transformation was possible. It was the first visible glimmer of the gold I had seen, a tangible step towards the vision. My conviction deepened with every wall repaired, every layer of paint stripped, every window installed. The work was demanding, balancing my regular job and my weekends in Havenwood, but seeing the physical manifestation of my plans silenced the lingering echoes of my family's doubt more effectively than any argument ever could. They saw a risky renovation. I saw the future I was building, piece by visible piece, proving that the gold wasn't just in my imagination. It was being brought back to life in the heart of Havenwood. With the exterior of the old hardware store beautifully restored, the focus shifted inward and to the workshop space. The sounds of heavy construction faded, replaced by the quieter work of interior framing, electrical wiring, plumbing, and preparing the spaces for their new purposes. The vision detailed in my blueprints was rapidly becoming a physical reality. The hardware store interior was laid out for 2 distinct retail units, preserving historical elements while installing modern infrastructure. The workshop, with its impressive high ceilings, was being fitted with modern lighting, HVAC, glass partitions for offices, and cabling for high-speed internet, the skeleton of the co-working space emerging from the decay. As the visible progress continued, something else began to happen: attention. The transformation wasn't just noticeable to the immediate neighbors in Havenwood, it was starting to attract eyes from further afield. A reporter from the county newspaper, doing a piece on downtown revitalization efforts, contacted me for an interview, fascinated by the contrast between the property's history and its planned future. A regional blog dedicated to highlighting small-town success stories featured the project, with before and after photos that starkly illustrated the dramatic change. This external validation was a turning point. It wasn't just my own conviction, or the cautious optimism of the locals anymore. Professionals in regional media and development circles were seeing the potential, acknowledging the significance of bringing these long-dormant buildings back to life. Inquiries started coming in from potential tenants, local artisans interested in the retail spots, remote workers in the area looking for dedicated workspace, even a small tech startup exploring the possibility of setting up an office in the II co-working space. This attention, this external validation, inevitably reached my family. Someone forwarded the newspaper article. A relative saw the blog post shared online. They heard about the positive buzz directly from friends or acquaintances in Havenwood. "Saw that piece in the County Chronicle, Alex," my mother said during a weekly call, her voice holding a new note. Not just surprise at the construction, but a hint of genuine curiosity and perhaps something akin to pride about the property. It looks really good in the photos. Uncle Frank called too. "Heard they're writing about your project, Alex. Getting some attention." His tone was less skeptical now, more assessing. "You're actually getting tenants. Interested?" Their reaction was different from their previous dismissal. The open skepticism from Thanksgiving dinner and the weary caution from when construction began started to waver. They couldn't simply dismiss it as a pipe dream or a money pit anymore. External voices they implicitly trusted more than my own, were validating the project's potential. They still didn't fully grasp the detailed vision or the market research behind it, but the undeniable progress and the external interest were changing their perception. The gold I had seen was no longer just a figment of my imagination. It was starting to glimmer in the eyes of others, and my family was beginning to notice that glimmer. My own focus remained intense, driven by the demanding reality of managing the project towards completion. But seeing the physical transformation, feeling the positive energy from the Havenwood community, and witnessing my family's skepticism finally begin to waver was incredibly validating. It proved that my vision wasn't naive. It was simply something they hadn't been able to see. The average kid who saw gold in the ashes was starting to show everyone else where the gold was buried. The foundation was laid, the walls were going up, and the potential was becoming undeniable. The project was nearing a critical point where its viability would be proven, not just on paper, but in operation. After months of relentless work, navigating construction challenges, securing tenants, and putting the final touches on the spaces, the Havenwood property was ready. The burden my family wanted to shed was about to open its doors for business. The old hardware store now housed two charming leased retail shops, a local artisan gallery, and a specialty coffee and book nook. The workshop, once a dusty, decaying shell, was transformed into a sleek, modern co-working space. The Havenwood Hub, equipped with high-speed internet, comfortable workstations, meeting rooms, and a small kitchen area. The opening day of the Havenwood Hub and the soft opening of the retail shops was met with a buzz of excitement in the small town. Locals came out, curious and hopeful. The initial skepticism I had encountered on the street years ago had largely been replaced by pride and anticipation. Seeing people walk through the doors, their faces lighting up at the transformation, was incredibly rewarding. The initial operation was a success. The co-working space quickly attracted remote workers who had been craving a dedicated workspace closer to home, as well as local entrepreneurs needing a professional environment. The retail shops saw steady traffic, bringing new energy to that block of downtown. The buildings that had sat dormant for years were once again filled with activity, laughter, and the quiet hum of productivity. The gold I had seen in the ashes was no longer just a glimmer. It was actively generating value, creating community, and proving its market viability. News of the successful launch reached my family, no longer just through chance sightings, but through deliberate sharing. The County Chronicle ran a prominent feature story with photos of the revitalized space and interviews with happy tenants and enthusiastic locals, highlighting the project as a key driver in downtown revitalization. My parents visited, walking through the co-working space and retail shops, their initial caution replaced by wide-eyed astonishment. The family's reaction was a dramatic shift from their past dismissal. The lingering skepticism I'd felt at Thanksgiving dinners and family picnics was completely wiped away. Surprise turned into genuine awe. "Alex," my father said, shaking his head as he looked around the hub, I can't believe you did this. It's amazing." Uncle Frank, always the most vocal skeptic, walked around shaking his head, a look of wonder on his face. "That old workshop? I never thought I'd see anything like this," he muttered. The conversation around the property changed entirely. It was no longer the burden, that old place, or Alex's risky project. It was the Havenwood hub, the downtown revitalization, the property that's bringing people back. They started talking, not about selling it, but about its increasing market value, implicitly acknowledging the financial wisdom they had once denied me. My status within the family was irrevocably changed. I wasn't the naive idealist whose ideas were politely dismissed. I was the one with vision, with business acumen, with the ability to execute a complex project and see potential where everyone else saw only decline. My credibility, once doubted, was now undeniable, established by the tangible, profitable reality I had created. The satisfaction of seeing the project thrive, of witnessing the positive impact it had on Havenwood, was immense. But the most profound satisfaction came from seeing the genuine astonishment and respect in my family's eyes. The gold wasn't just shining for the community, it was shining brightly enough to illuminate their past skepticism and prove that the person they doubted was the one who could see and create true value. The average kid who saw gold in the ashes had not only found it, but had brought it to life for everyone to see. My undeniable success had spoken louder than any words. The Havenwood hub and the revitalized retail spaces weren't just open, they were thriving. The co-working space was consistently booked, buzzing with activity. The retail shops were doing well, bringing a new kind of energy and foot traffic to downtown Havenwood. The project was featured again, this time in a regional business journal, highlighting its innovative approach to rural revitalization. The burden had become a success story, far exceeding anyone's expectations, except perhaps my own. My family's perception of me and of the property had undergone a radical transformation. The skepticism that had defined their view of my plans was completely gone, replaced by a palpable sense of surprise, awe, and, for some, perhaps a hint of regret. They spoke about the property differently now. It wasn't that old place or the burden anymore. It was the Havenwood hub, Alex's project, a source of genuine pride, even if that pride was tinged with the memory of their past doubt. "Heard the hub is doing great, Alex," my cousin Mark, the one in finance, said during a call. His voice held a note of genuine respect I hadn't heard from him before regarding my professional life. "Seriously impressive what you've pulled off." Aunt Carol, who had been the most vocal about it being a drain, now gushed, "The coffee shop is just adorable, and the co-working space looks so modern. Who would have thought?" Her amazement seemed sincere. But beneath the praise and the dawning realization of the property's success, a new dynamic emerged. It was the quiet, if only. If only we'd known. If only we'd seen what you saw. Sometimes it was explicit, a direct comment lamenting that the family had missed out on the opportunity. More often, it was implicit in the way they talked, about how much the property must be worth now, their eyes lingering a moment too long on the subject, a subtle regret in their tone. There might be tentative questions about future plans, maybe even hints about potential involvement or benefiting from future development, now that the risk was gone and the gold was shining. The irony was sharp, almost overwhelming at times. The same people who had questioned my basic business sense, who had been eager to unload the property for next to nothing, were now seeing its immense value and wishing they had a share. They had seen only ashes and had been quick to discard them. Only I had seen the gold, had taken the risk, had poured in the work, and now the gold was undeniably mine. My control over the asset was absolute. I was the sole owner, the decision-maker. The revenue generated flowed into the project's reinvestment and my own accounts. The future direction of the Havenwood Hub, potential expansions, new initiatives leveraging its success, was entirely in my hands. Their past doubt hadn't just cost them a financial stake. It had cost them any claim to influence over its future. The culmination of this shift was perhaps most evident during a rare family dinner where everyone was present. The conversation inevitably turned to Havenwood, to Alex's incredible project. The praise flowed freely, the astonishment still fresh. And then, Uncle Frank, after a thoughtful pause, looked at me across the table. "You know, Alex," he said, his voice softer than usual, devoid of its old skepticism. "That property, it was in the family for generations. It's something to see what one person's vision can do with something everyone else had given up on." His words, intended as praise, also carried the weight of what was missed, the acknowledgement that it was my vision, my effort, and now my success, with the asset they had abandoned. It wasn't a direct plea for a share, not yet. But the sentiment was clear. They saw the gold, they saw the value, and they saw that it was entirely in my hands, earned by taking the risk they wouldn't. The family who had doubted my ability, who had been blind to the potential, now looked at me with a mixture of respect, awe, and the quiet, enduring weight of what their lack of belief had cost them. The gold was shining, and it illuminated the chasm between their past dismissal and my present reality. The success of the Havenwood Hub and the revitalized property became a constant topic of conversation within the family. The initial awe from Chapter 6 settled into a steady stream of admiration and a palpable sense of what had been missed. The if-onlys became more frequent, more explicit. At family gatherings, cousins would comment on how much the property must be worth now, their tone a mix of genuine impressiveness and a quiet lament for the opportunity passed up. Uncle Frank, no longer the skeptic, would shake his head and say, "To think we wanted to sell that for nothing." One evening, during a smaller family dinner, the conversation turned directly to the property's future and, implicitly, to their past decision. A family member, perhaps bolder than the rest, tentatively asked about potential future expansions or investments, hinting at the possibility of contributing or being involved now that the project was a clear success. I knew this conversation was coming. It wasn't malicious, not exactly. It was human nature, seeing undeniable success in something you dismissed and wishing you had believed. I addressed it directly, calmly, but clearly stating the reality of how we got here. "I understand the sentiment," I said, looking around at the faces that had once held such doubt. "And I appreciate the interest now. But when this property was a burden, when it was costing us money and everyone agreed it was best to cut our losses and sell, I was the only one who saw a different possibility." I didn't dwell on their doubt, but I stated the facts. I took on the risk. I put in years of my own time, my own money from my regular job, my own research and planning. At a time when no one else believed it was worth saving or investing in, I poured everything I had into turning that vision into reality. Their reactions were subdued. Heads nodded slowly. The discomfort was clear, but they couldn't deny the truth in my words. They had made their decision then, choosing the path of least resistance, of perceived practicality. I had made mine, choosing belief and relentless effort. They accepted the reality that the success and the ownership and control that came with it was mine alone, earned from the ashes they had abandoned. There was no demand from my side, no gloating. But I wanted to acknowledge the family connection, albeit on my terms. This property has been in the family for generations, I continued, and its revival is important to me, not just as a business, but because of that history. I decided to offer a small, symbolic gesture, a way to connect them to the success without diluting my ownership or the principle of earned value. Anyone in the family who wants to use the Havenwood Hub co-working space will always have a discounted rate, I offered. And if anyone ever has a business idea that needs a retail space downtown, come talk to me first. Family gets priority on any future openings or projects related to the property. It wasn't a share of the profits or ownership, and they understood that. It was an offer of access, of opportunity linked directly to the asset I had saved, a gesture that reinforced my control while acknowledging the shared history. They accepted the offer gracefully, understanding the boundaries. The final family dynamic was one of permanent respect and admiration. The skepticism was gone forever, replaced by a genuine understanding of my vision and capability. I wasn't just Alex, the quiet kid with naive ideas. I was Alex, the one who saw the gold, the one who made it happen, the one with the business acumen that saved a family asset. My place in the family was elevated, solidified by the tangible success that stood as a monument to my belief and effort. Reflecting on the journey, the irony was always present. They doubted my ability to see value, and that doubt fueled my determination to create it. They saw a burden, and I saw an opportunity. The property in Havenwood wasn't just a successful business venture. It was a physical manifestation of the principle that true worth is earned, not given, and that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the places everyone else is ready to abandon. I had seen the gold in the ashes, and by bringing it to light, I had not only saved a family asset, but had also proven my ability to my family, and most importantly, to myself. I was the undisputed owner, not just of the property, but of the vindication that came with it.